Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here. I'm Max Page. I'm the president of the Mass Teachers Association, which represents 115,000 public school and college and university educators in the Commonwealth. I really want to thank you all for being here. I really thank all the people who helped put this together. I think we are forever in the debt of the people who helped put this together. Mass MoCA, and I give a special shout out to our MTA staff and Stephanie Marcotte, and of course our artist, Kelly Adams, who did this remarkable work of art. I've often said that it is artists who often capture something more powerfully than any words we have, and walk in there and to see this incredible room of bowls capturing one person's average debt is very, very powerful, given that there are millions and millions who have that debt that adds up to $1.8 trillion of debt. I just want to step back for a second to say sort of I guess the phrase of the day is my why. I grew up in Amherst, and I went to the public schools there. My father taught at UMass. My mother got her degrees there. I teach there. My wife teaches there. And it is one of the joys of the place, and even growing up, I sensed this when my father would have students over for sometimes have seminars there. It still remains, despite all the changes, despite the rise in tuition and debt, it is still a place where working class students go to get a public education. It is our public student college graduates and our university graduates who stay in the Commonwealth and become the parents, become the civic leaders, become the workers, become the leaders in the Commonwealth. It is not private schools in Massachusetts. Generally, those students leave. It is the public school, college students who stay here. Let me give you just a quick, so I teach architectural history at UMass. That's why I love coming out to Mass MoCA all the time. And one of the buildings that many people have seen that you might consider ugly, I will in hopefully just 2 minutes tell you why it's actually quite beautiful. It's the Fine Arts Center at UMass Amherst. Many of you may know that was where my office was in the architecture department. It is a big, huge, gargantuan concrete structure that many consider ugly, and I used it too. But I came to see it as quite beautiful because when you think of that, they built it in the late 60s, early 70s, the largest arts complex west of Boston. And they took this, they have a dance center, music, the biggest auditorium west of Boston. And then the top, if you know it, or you don't need to know, you can picture it, on these big columns is a 646-foot long set of art studios, all with these clear stories facing north, a beautiful north-facing light that artists love the most. And who did they build it for? They built this for working class students in Massachusetts. The largest arts complex of its time, built for working class students in Massachusetts. It's the entrance to the campus. And I always now look at it and go who does that? Why would we do that? To say that this grandest building for working class students will be the sort of the entrance to the campus. And they did that, and the state and the federal government paid for it. Students didn't pay for it with student debt, and at the time when they built it, all the way through the 80s, you could go to UMass Amherst and graduate debt-free. What we are trying to do here today is not invent a brand new world, it is actually to invent a world we used to live in. Okay, so that's where I come back to whenever I go by. My building is now actually just up the hill from there, the architecture department, but I look out on that Fine Arts Center. That's kind of a model for what we're trying to do. We need here is a public education system that is universal, free, and a right from pre-K all the way through higher ed. And student debt that students have to go from when I grew up in Amherst High School, 1 mile away was UMass, people would go, of course we would all say it should be free. K-12 is of course free, it's a right. They would walk a mile and they would be paying $15,000. Now after what UMass just did, it'll be $17,000 of tuition and fees for every student. Debt is a failure of society. It's a failure to invest in the fundamental institutions. It's saying that we're going to foist off this fundamental right, which is to an education, onto individuals and families. And it's corrosive, it's destructive, racially and economically destructive, it's corrosive to our communities, and it's economically dumb. It undermines the economic vibrancy and prosperity of the Commonwealth. Fortunately, everyone here, has helped create a moment where we can actually imagine a debt-free future. We passed the Fair Share Amendment in November. Little cheer, thank you. We asked the very wealthiest people in one of the very wealthiest states in the nation to pay a little bit more so we could invest in public education, pre-K through higher ed, as well as roads, bridges, and transportation. And hundreds of millions of dollars will be flowing into our colleges and universities above and beyond whatever we've seen before because of that. That's one step forward. And we've also put forward the Cherish Act through the Higher Ed for All campaign, which will do what no other state has done, which is to guarantee debt-free public higher education for any resident. And I say resident, even though I love the word citizen, it's for every resident. Anyone who lives in Massachusetts, however they got here, whatever their status, should have access to that. So we've provided the money, we've provided the blueprint, now we just have to have decision makers finally implement. This really will be historical and nation-changing if we achieve as the first state true debt-free, a guarantee to every resident that they will have debt-free public higher education. So let me just end the last point, which is when we achieve debt-free public higher education, we invest also in the quality of our faculty and staff and buildings on our campuses, we'll have created the conditions for racial and economic justice in the Commonwealth. People talk a lot about those words. It's impossible unless you allow every resident to have access to high-quality, debt-free public higher education. It's economically wise and will create incredible economic growth when you have more members of our community having access to a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. Let me say the last thing is debt-free public higher ed is also liberatory. Because what it does is it says you can go to college and you follow your passions and your avocation and you pursue whatever you think is best, which will be best ultimately for this community. One of the things that I've been seeing, and I know MCLA has been facing this, is when there's a vocationalization and a focus on narrow notions of what college is for, which is to be the workforce for businesses. That's one part of what we do. But we also are supposed to create thinking, creative adults and civic leaders. So you eliminate the debt, the burden of debt. You allow people to pursue what they really are passionate about. And if they're passionate about it, then they will produce the artists and the writers, as well as the workers and thinkers and adults and parents and civic leaders that we all need. So I'm so glad to be here, and let's go win this. Thank you.